Who were the first people to fly an airplane? You might have heard of these guys. The Wright brothers. They're the ones who are credited with inventing and building the world's first successful airplane. And they made the first ever flight in this thing right here. It was called the Flyer. In December of 1903, Orville flew the Flyer for 12 seconds over a distance of 120 feet. Technically speaking, that's not even that far. Like, I could probably throw a football farther than that, but the significance of what they did cannot be understated. It changed the world, and it helped usher in a new age of transportation. But how did they do it? Well, their success can be attributed to a lot of things. They were extremely intelligent, very creative problem solvers, dedicated to their craft. They had access to cutting-edge technology at the time. And perhaps, most importantly, they had each other. Because it turns out that working with your sibling can actually be a great thing, if you know how to do it. That is, when you work with someone who's part of your immediate family, there are certain benefits that you just don't get anywhere else. For example, you have a shared history. The Wright brothers knew each other better than anyone else. They knew how each other thought, how each other felt, and what made each other tick. They also shared a deep bond and an unwavering love for one another, which helped them overcome all the obstacles in their path. And finally, when you work with your sibling, you have someone who's invested in your success because they want to see you succeed. Not because they want something from you, or because they're paid to say they do. The Wright brothers are a perfect example of how siblings can accomplish amazing things together, but it's not always so rosy. If you have a sibling, then you know that there are times where they just get under your skin. And if you ask any business owner, they'll tell you that working with family comes with its unique set of challenges. But the Wright brothers managed to overcome those challenges and achieve something truly special. Orville and Wilbur were born in the mid-1800s in Ohio. They grew up on a farm and they had a pretty normal childhood. All things considered. From an early age, they were fascinated by mechanics and all things related to flight. This was likely influenced by the fact that their father was a bishop, and he would often take the boys on long walks through the nearby woods. During these walks, he would tell them stories about the Bible and the miracles that he witnessed while traveling the country. He also instilled in them a deep sense of curiosity and wonder about the natural world. It was during one of these walks that the boys found a wounded bird and took care of it until it was well enough to fly away. This experience had a profound impact on them, and it sparked their lifelong interest in aviation. When the boys were old enough, they attended high school. However, they did unstay in school for very long, because they soon realized that they were more interested in teaching themselves than learning from their teachers. So they eventually dropped out and started their own school. As they got older, they began to experiment with kites and gliders. They built gliders out of boxers and tissue paper, and they tested them out in the nearby Kitty Hawk. One day, they decided to try to fly one of their gliders without any rigging. This was a dangerous stunt, but the brothers were determined to succeed. Unfortunately, their glider crashed and they both sustained serious injuries. But this didn't deter them. They learned from their mistakes, and they continued to experiment with flight. In 1899, the brothers traveled to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, where they built a larger glider. This glider was more advanced than anything they had built before, and it was capable of carrying a pilot. Once again, the brothers tested their glider, but it crashed once again. However, they had made some progress, and they were now closer to achieving their goal of building a successful airplane. By this point, the brothers had developed a strong understanding of aerodynamics, and they were confident that they could build an airplane that would be able to fly. They began to experiment with different designs, and they eventually settled on a biplane. They built the first prototype of their airplane in 1900, and they began to test it out. The airplane was able to make short hops, but it was not yet capable of sustained flight. The brothers continued to refine their design, and they eventually came up with the Flyer. The Flyer was an improved version of their previous airplane, and it was capable of carrying a pilot for longer distances. On December 17, 1903, Orville made the first successful flight of the Flyer. He flew it for 12 seconds over a distance of 120 feet. While this may not seem like much, it was a monumental achievement. It marked the first time that a human being had been able to fly through the air under their own power. The news of the Wright brothers' success spread like wildfire, and they soon became world famous. They had achieved what many people thought was impossible, and they had done it working together. As time went on, the Wright brothers continued to innovate, and they made many improvements to the airplane. They designed new engines, new wings, and new control systems. They also founded the Wright Company, which would go on to become one of the most successful aircraft companies in the world. Sadly, the Wright brothers never got to see the future of aviation. They died in the early 1940s, and they missed out on seeing airplanes become a common form of transportation. But their legacy lives on. The Wright brothers are remembered as the pioneers of aviation, and their story continues to inspire people around the world. So the next time you step onto an airplane, take a moment to think about the Wright brothers and what they accomplished. Working together, they were able to achieve something that many people thought was impossible. And their success ushered in a new age of transportation that has changed the world forever. Thank you for watching this video. Now here's another video you can watch.